on the things. I think we should be good. Looks all right here. Audio looks good. Here's mics there. Put another one here and there. Okay. Kill the lights. Thank you. All right. Okie doke. All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for showing up for another Ethereum Vancouver event here at Decontrol. Yeah, I'm Tangle. I'm going to do the talk tonight here, but before that, we've got, I guess next week, next Wednesday, or actually no, Nouns Running Club, Saturday at noon. So if anybody wants to run, I talk about this all the time, but if anybody wants to run, head over to Cactus Club at Cole Harbor, and yeah, go for a run. 5K. It's easy. It's chill. You get a PO app afterwards, and you get some exercise. Yeah, so that's Saturday. Then Wednesday we've got NFT and coffee. That's from 4 to 6. That'll be here. And I think we're having another little event in the evening as well. So come check the Decontrol Discord on that. Not fully up to speed on. There's like I think a dance event or something. We're going to have a little party here. Yeah. And then there is there's an off-chain event. Off-chain, what are they? Off-chain labs? Or what are they? Anyway, off-chain, not off-chain lab, but like off-chain. Yeah, off-chain Vancouver. Anyways, they're having an event on the 15th at Andco, which is over on Georgia and Cardero. So yeah, we posted on that on the on Twitter, so you can follow up there, and yeah, should be. Yeah, you can find out more information on that. But yeah, anyhow, yeah, let's jump into it here. So tonight we're going to talk about Ethereum liquid staking tokens. A look into what they are and how they work. Yeah. So I will preface this with, like, we've got a few things. There's like a few different things to cover here, like a bunch of stuff probably with like just Ethereum staking in itself. Like that's probably a whole other talk. I'm going to touch on a little bit of that stuff. And then like afterwards, people are probably going to ask about restaking. We're not going to really talk about that too much, but we will address it and maybe get into some conversation afterwards. I know we have some exports in the room. All right, what is Ethereum staking? Ethereum staking refers to the participation in Ethereum's transaction validation process, which is following its move to proof of stake consensus protocol. When staking, users lock in or stake tokens to the blockchain in order to receive earn validator opportunities that secure the network in exchange for rewards. So currently around 3.8% APR is kind of what people are getting as a high level. And maybe we should start looking at what proof of stake is versus proof of work. So proof of stake, obviously it requires your crypto to stake to operate. Uses validators to create new blocks and build out the network, whereas proof of work was required crypto mining, crypto miners to operate, uses winners of complex competitive puzzles to create and build new blocks out to build out the network. So examples in proof of stake, we've got, obviously things like Ethereum, Solana, Avalanche, Cosmos, other examples of proof of work. Going back to, all the way to Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin, and our Bcash, one of the Bitcoin forks. Lots of other examples around that, but the main part being here that, with the differentiating between stake versus like computational power is kind of an easy way to think about it. So let's take a look at proof of stake here in Ethereum. Requires large upfront capital costs. So right now, 32 ETH per validator, you're around like 70K US. That's not really that attainable for a lot of people now. However, when Ethereum was dramatically less, almost 10x less when a lot of people started staking, quite a bit easier to get in. Requires lower affordable computational hardware. So as compared to some of the miners, like for mining gear that you would need for mining Bitcoin to even be remotely profitable, this is much cheaper, easier, lower kind of barrier to entry. A lot of just simple computers can be used, or special dedicated devices that are really small and don't require a lot of they're not using up all the energy and boiling the oceans as so many people are concerned about. We do have a few old miners in the back there in the museum if you want to have a look. Even GPUs and stuff too that used to be profitable, obviously not anymore, and haven't been for quite some time. Also requires high uptime connectivity to the network. You need to be online all the time and have a good solid connection. Requires node operators to behave to prevent slashing. So again, there's like kind of there's incentives for you to behave and and be a good operator within the network, and there's penalties for being bad, essentially. So you'll provide block slot rewards for proposing valid blocks. We'll get into that a little bit more there. And I think this was just a number I'd found here, but around like 0.24 ETH per block, or with MEV Boost opt-in, and that's a whole other kind of ball of wax too. But most people are using the MEV Boost software. Which extracts. I guess we haven't really got into this in a while. We haven't had an MEV talk in a bit. So the maximal extractable value being added in through the a whole deep can of worms here around all that. But with searchers building batching transactions together and passing it on to the builder, and then the builder passes it on to the proposer. Quite a bit to go into there, but there's a lot of value that gets extracted out of that and fees that get paid. So hence more rewards and significantly just by using MEV Boost. So proof of work requires no upfront asset capital costs. You don't have to buy any of the underlying asset. You can just have your hardware, plug it in, connect to the network, and start generating new assets, or generating new revenue from your machines. But that does require major computational expensive hardware. Again, you've seen some of those devices back there, and now imagine rows and rows and rows of those as compared to just having a lot of ETH in a wallet that's pretty easy to handle. So again, one little box can be basically doing similar kind of output in value as compared to like an entire warehouse of miners that also have a lot of hardware problems as well. Again, proof of work has been a tried and tested solution, so not really there's definitely needs for it. It does require high uptime connectivity to the network as well. You want to be online all the time to make sure that you're there to when you do win a block or you're part of it, part of a pool that does, that you can process that. Consensus with miners and node operators requires miners to behave in order to receive the block reward. So if you're being a bad actor, you'll just like either not get the block reward, or you could, if you're trying to create some double spend attack or something, the network will just signal that you're not accurate. But block rewards right now, for example, are 6.25 Bitcoin per block, so that's every 10 minutes. And soon in April of 24, it's going to be reduced by half to 3.125. So the halvening, as we refer to that. Yes, grab the mic. Oh yeah, if anybody has questions, hit the mic, please.
What about Tango? What are your thoughts on Dogecoin right now and like proof of work? Is it decentralized still? Is it going to be? Is there going to be significant like building because of maybe Twitter or anything along those lines? What are your thoughts on it?
My thoughts are like Dogecoin is fun.
Yeah.
I love Dogecoin because it's fun, it's fast, and it used to be really cheap. It's not as cheap anymore, but it's still cheap.
Yeah.
Again, a little bit straying away from the topic here today, but I don't know. I haven't looked at like the network, division, or like where the, separation, or how much like diversity there is in miners and what that landscape looks like. But
I thought it was something that my head jumped to in all of this Ethereum talk we're going to be doing, and like all the options that we can get for APR on liquid staked ETH. It's like there's something jump entirely into a different part of the market. Yeah, sorry, but almost to ask that, but it was like proof of work is like an interesting way to come to consensus on all of this, and yeah. So anyways, thanks.
Yeah, Dogecoin to the moon. All right. So a little bit about again, we're just going to try and talk a little bit about how staking works, just so we can kind of understand what's going on and how that actually relates to to liquid staking tokens. But so yeah, under proof of stake, the introduction of the ideas of a safe head or a justified block. If you go further back, a finalized block would be so expensive to revert. So that takes like 1/3 of all of Ethereum to actually signal for that, which 1/3 is kind of a key thing that people want to keep in mind. So yeah, if we look at this, there's a slot every 12 seconds. So that's like, as we would think about a block, but you're like, wait, what's a slot? Well, a slot is just like the ability for a block to be proposed, but there is the ability to like not actually have a block in the slot, which is a little bit confusing. Let's not get not caught up in that, but like that slot could actually be left empty. That is a possibility. So an epoch is made up of 32 slots, and so 32 times the 12 seconds, so every 6.4 minutes is an epoch, and then every 2 epochs gives us finality. So anything past that is considered finalized in 12 to 13 minutes, kind of that time period. And here's just a little graph on how this all works. So you can see in like epoch 3, that's like kind of where we're at, the latest block for that, and you can see all the way back 2 epochs. That's where those are finalized, and the other ones coming forward are still not quite finalized. So there could be some could actually be sort of changed, but yeah, just to kind of give a little outline of that. Yeah, and then so with proposers and attesters, proposers selected at random for each slot. Both proposers and attesters receive rewards. There's like a bunch of complex math that goes on with like, I don't know, square rooting and a bunch of other things. We don't need to get into that today. That's a whole other topic for it. But I think like what I've found here is like proposers receive about 1/8 of that reward, and then the attesters receive the remainder, which is all kind of distributed throughout all of them. So obviously proposers receiving a much larger chunk. So this is where like the yield is coming from, when we're always talking about where is all the staked ETH yield coming from. Obviously these proposers and attesters, so a proposer being like validators, they are receiving all of these rewards, and that's where this gets passed on to the liquid staking token, which we'll get into. So again, this is all happening on the beacon chain, so thinking about it from the consensus and the execution layers. Yeah, so consensus in the beacon chain, that's where like the block attestations happen, the running of the fork of choice algorithm, managing the rewards and the penalties. So any slashing that's going on for misbehaving actors, that's all taken care of there. And then execution layer is where most of us are more familiar with, where you're doing transaction processing and smart contract interactions and degenning around, buying into the most favorite, your latest shitcoin or getting rugged somewhere. But yeah, so that's kind of how we think about it, because as these staked ETH are on, essentially you're into the beacon chain, you need to remember that there's times to go in and out of there, which we'll get into. Risks and slashing. So yeah, when a validator operates maliciously or makes incorrect or on-chain attestation, this will result in slashed or lost earnings. So be a good behavior, or otherwise you're going to get wrecked. Yeah, the slashing insurance is to keep validators accountable, and is utilized to punish validators for inactivity or malicious actions. Some violations that cause slashing include proposing and signing 2 different blocks, or for the same slot, or attesting to change the history of a block. If slashed, staked ETH will gradually be taken from the validator and then will be removed from the network. So, and yeah, incorrect or malicious on-chain attestations, whether that's intentional or not. Proposing to signing or signing 2 different blocks. So a lot of people maybe think about this, when we're going back to proof of work, where you're trying to do like a double spend. Testing the change of the history of blocks. You're trying to rewrite the blockchain and say that something is that it isn't. Yeah, so all of these kind of actions, these mechanisms are in place to like prevent that from happening. Validator staking options. So here's, when we're thinking about this, and this is kind of where we start to understand why liquid stakings come in, liquid staking tokens come into play here, because like solo staking requires 32 ETH, as we had originally said. So if somebody wants to spin up their own validator, you need 32 ETH. Okay, that's a bunch right now. Staking as a service, so you can have deposits of 32 ETH for a validator, but delegate node operators, as a third party to run it for you. And then finally we come to, pooled staking, where you can deposit any type or any amount of ETH. Some that's maybe not accurate. Some places may require you to have a minimum. And then receive a receipt token representing your stake in the protocol. And these are where we have liquid staking tokens, or centralized exchanges will do this as well. So here's like a piece that we want to touch on is like the beacon deposits and withdrawals. So there's like a queue to get in and out of the beacon chain. Right now, like took these screenshots today. So the validator queue is like pretty chill to get in, to get in. So it's 1 day and 14 hours. So you got a day and a half before you're actually onto the beacon chain. So there's like these time periods of, depending on demand and a variety of other things, it's like how long it's going to take you to get in, and when to the exit queue, the timing for that. So right now the exit queue is pretty chill, but there's also like there's like a withdraw period as well. So like I think that's been like closer to 14 days. So like you can't just like really go in and come out really quick and fast, and there's like kind of these time periods to make sure that doesn't happen. So with all of this, it's like, okay, we've just talked about all of the requirements for staking and how that all works, and it's like that might just be a little too much hassle for the average user. You're just like, hey, you know what? I know that there's yield. I know that that's there. Like, I don't really want to manage a validator. I'm like worried about my network connection. What happens if my power goes out? How am I staying? Making sure that my internet provider is giving me the best uptime. Dealing with like deposit and withdrawal queues, because we said, hey, it's got to take some time to get in, to get out. What happens if there's a huge, influx of demand for either coming in or going out? Like recently here with, Celsius just withdrew a bunch of ETH from validators, and that was like, clogged up timelines for people. Capital inefficiencies, because you've now staked your 32 ETH that's over on a not accessible to you immediately. Like you could maybe be doing something else with that 32 ETH inside of Ethereum. So you don't really have direct access to that, and you might be getting suboptimal rewards. Like let's say your uptime isn't ideal, or you've joined your validator sets is just like not. I don't know. I haven't never run one of these things, but I've heard from people that have said like based off of their how they've tweaked their parameters, like maybe they're not getting as great of rewards as they could have from other actors who are actually online all the time, or using the latest software updated to everything. So there can be a little bit of there's a lot of overhead involved with being your own staker. And again, we've also talked about like capital and whatnot too. So this is where now we start saying, hey, let's explore some liquid staking tokens. So liquid staking protocols are the service providers for liquid staking tokens, and are the tokens that represent the claim on the staked assets. So essentially, when you deposit into a LST, you are getting, or liquid staking token, you're getting a receipt of their ETH. So it's kind of identifying their brand or their type of Ethereum that it's giving you a receipt token for it essentially. So the advantages to this are increased capital efficiency, so users can maximize the utility of their staked assets by simultaneously earning stake rewards and engaging in other DeFi activities or shenanigans. So that's kind of a cool part of it, so that you can actually continue to use it throughout the ecosystem. Flexibility, so LSTs provide the freedom to exit positions or engage with the market without waiting for long unbonding periods typical of many staking protocols. So now that instant liquidity essentially, like you could now say, hey, I want to get rid of all my ETH, I just want out, thank you, here, I want to go to a DEX and just exit everything. Or you want to just get rid of part of it, say, hey, actually I just want to free up a little bit, but I don't want to have to like unstake an entire validator from 32 ETH and then have to manage, and now I'm stuck with the rest of the 32 ETH or 30 some ETH if you just wanted to really get 2 out of it. So yeah, it offers a lot more flexibility with that, and or even getting into it too. Like if let's say you don't want to wait a day to start staking your ETH, you could be just essentially going into a liquid staking token in the next 13 seconds. Diversification, user can diversify their strategies, staking on one platform while using the LST to engage with another. So you could be, using your, staking into one protocol and then using it somewhere else in another DeFi platform in order to, generate more yield or do something with that. Disadvantages with these are the complexity. So with the introduction of LST adds another layer of complexity to the already intricate DeFi landscape. So how do we pricing these things? How do they grow in value? How does that work within pools? How do we manage this all throughout DeFi? So there's a few things that we'll get into as we talk about each of the LSTs. Risk exposure, so while they provide liquidity, exposure to risk to like the broader DeFi markets. So if something happens within, if you're involved in a DeFi protocol and there's something happens, like you are at chance of risk of losing something. Over collateralization is where some protocols might require higher collateral when using LSTs compared to traditional assets, which can be less capital efficient. And price discrepancy, the value of LSTs might not always reflect the underlying value of the staked assets, leading to potential price discrepancies and arbitrage opportunities. So if an LST is actually worth, it may not be worth the actual underlying ETH that's there for it. There may be like a small discount to it because of the fact that, well, you do need to like pay gas to actually get out of it, or it requires, maybe there's some risk that people are not comfortable with, and they'll say, hey, well, this isn't actually worth as much as the underlying ETH. So there might be a bit of a discrepancy there. So that can cause a bit of issues with that. But yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, this is all like kind of you're relying on the smart contract that is, essentially holding all of this ETH. And if that is, if that smart contract gets wrecked, there's a chance that, that LST could be completely wrecked and drained. Yeah, so there's always like, a lot of risk. So do your own research before getting into any one of these. So let's take a look at the LST landscape right now. Here's a nice chart from Hildobby. So you can see that there is over 30 million ETH staked in the protocol right now. Yeah, so there's, if you divide that by 32, that gets you 943,000 validators. So yeah, out of all of the Ethereum in supply, 25% of it is staked. So that's actually quite a notable thing that, 25%, so a quarter of all the ETH in circulation are actually staked in the protocol to, help, to help validate it. Now, the next one part here is the Lido staking market share. So Lido is one of the biggest ones. I'm sure a lot of you have talked about or have heard about it. Currently, out of that 25% that is of Ethereum that is staked, 31% of that is from Lido. So it does start to create a bit of a centralization risk. So you can kind of see in the charts here below with some of the larger ones here, but Lido is like at 31%, and then you can see like Coinbase being the next biggest one with like 14% of all the staked ETH. So we start to run into some like people are like starting to pay attention to this and actually saying, hey, start thinking about diversity and like spreading this out, because any kind of larger entities with centralization, that's what we're trying to avoid here in this ecosystem. So yeah. Anyways, let's take a look at Lido. So this is the ST ETH, or staked ETH, as a lot of people have referred to this as. This is the largest amount of staked ETH, as we just talked about. However, they are non-custodial, so you are able to you actually hold the token within your. You hold your token. It's decentralized. However, this is a rebasing token, so it requires wrapping for DeFi. So earlier on, we talked a little bit about how. How like there was potential problems within using DeFi and like these discrepancies and whatnot. So this is a bit of an issue. So like ST ETH, as it's rebasing, it's actually growing every day. It changes, the amount of it grows in your wallet. So if you had one staked ETH today, tomorrow you might have 1.001, and so on and so forth. So over a year, essentially you should see that that's 0 or 1 point. If we're looking at 4%, 1.04, ST ETH is what's in your wallet, because it's growing all the time. So that becomes a bit of a problem when you're trying to use that in DeFi, because now how do we price that? How do we work with that in pools and LP pools and stuff? So it doesn't really work. So now they've created a wrapper for it to keep it down so that it stays at a same rate. And then there's a 10% fee. So with a lot of these with all of these staking protocols, they do have fees on top of it that go to your rewards. So out of the rewards, that's where they're taking 10%. So on that 4% annual, let's call it, just for the APR, obviously that number increases a little bit depending, because if they're recompounding, auto compounding, or however we want to call this, to get your APY over the year, that number increases. But that's where they're taking 10% of that, and that's kind of like a service fee, so that you aren't having to run a validator, you aren't having to manage all this, deal with network time and whatnot. So that's the fee that they have on there. Any questions so far here? I know I kind of was running through a bunch of this before we kind of dive into other tokens. Yeah, grab a mic. Turn it on. There you go. Yes, one push. There you go. Don't have to hold it.
Yes. So what's the difference between Lido, Rocket Pool, and
we're gonna get into that.
And Eigenlayer?
Ooh, Eigenlayer is a whole restaking thing, and we're gonna try. We'll talk about it a little bit at the end. We might have more of a discussion on it, but yeah, that's a whole restaking meme and narrative. But yes, we got another one, Julian.
Are all LSDs or LSTs like they rebase the same, as in? Because I understood that with Lido or with staked ETH, one staked ETH would be worth like 1.1 ETH at redemption in the future, whereas others, you're saying that it adds a number to your wallet, or?
So yeah, it depends on, and that's where we'll kind of get into this and how some of these work differently. But essentially, all of them are growing. Just how that number gets reflected in your wallet, or how they actually manage that, is where things kind of differ, and why things are we'll get into that as we go here.
Thank you.
You bet. So yes, that was one of the things with Lido. So Coinbase, second largest amount of staked ETH. They are custodial. So again, any of this stuff that they own your ETH. You're dealing with a centralized exchange. I think many of you have heard my stances on centralized exchanges and how you should just try and avoid that. But if you really feel that this is the right product for you, I mean, I can't stop you. But so it's obviously centralized control around this, and so then you deposit. You go into Coinbase, you stake it, and then when you withdraw it, you get CB ETH, and that's a wrapped version as well. So that's where you can actually use that throughout the DeFi ecosystem and whatnot. But normally you're just doing that directly through their platform, and just a cool 25% fee. So they really, that's a really attractive number. So Rocket Pool does a variety of different things. Some people have seen it where you can have like mini pools of like 8 and 16 ETH, so that you can actually stake through them with that. They are the second largest non-custodial staked ETH platform, next to Lido. Oops, I kind of didn't fill that whole thing up there, but they're decentralized, and they do have a 14% fee as well. So that's a little bit higher, but obviously they're utilized within DeFi quite a bit as well. Swell ETH is another interesting one. It's actually an omni-chain token. It's so it can go between all of the different networks on Ethereum. It's decentralized, and it also is a reward-bearing token. So now this kind of gets back into what Julian was talking about here, where it's almost like a little bit of a vault where the tokens are accruing in value. So your ETH is accruing in value, but it's inside of a vault essentially. And there's a better version of this which we'll get into in a minute. But so your Swell ETH stays the same in number value, in quantity, but the underlying assets are what's growing in it. So when you redeem it for ETH, you will actually get more more ETH from it when you redeem. Again, this is where having like a stable unit is excellent for use within DeFi. I can't really express that enough. But as if you're having like fluctuations in rebased assets, it's just really hard to price, and there's just like crazy arbitrage opportunities throughout DeFi, so it just gets to be a real mess, and just a really accounting mess as well. I guess that's other part of it too for some people with like tax purposes, like when every day you're seeing this asset increase, like how are you claiming that with tax as well? That might actually be a problem for some people, because it's, are you actually having a taxable event every day or every time that, a rebasing token decides to distribute rewards and that token grows in amount? So some things there, but so Swell ETH is DeFi ready, and they've got a 10% fee.
Just a quick question on that. I was actually on Swell today, putting a couple ETH on, and it was actually like, it felt like I was getting a lot less of the is it SWETH? Like,
correct. Yeah, and I should maybe bring that up, because if you were to have deposited when this was first started, because it would have been 1-to-1, because there had been no yield, baked into it, right? So your 1 ETH is going to actually give you less staked, of the staked ETH, so Swell ETH in this case, because when you redeem that underlying, you're still going to get more ETH than what you had of the amount of Swell ETH. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, swapping out, you're going to obviously take on slippage and any price differences and whatnot. But if you're redeeming it, then essentially you would, in theory, you should get just the same amount of ETH that you got into it. So because these vault style tokens, or reward bearing, they already have a bunch of ETH underneath it that is growing. So in order for you to get that percentage that 1 ETH is worth of the underlying vault, essentially, you're not going to get exactly one Swell ETH out of it in that case. Does that make sense? Is that
that honestly makes me way more stoked. I was wondering what I did earlier today. I was like, man, that seems like a bad deal, but it's good to know as long as I claim it.
Right, when you claim, and again, when you swap out, depending on where it is, what the liquidity looks like, and all of that, there's definitely you may not get as bad of slippage or pricing, but there is just that, swapping out, you're probably not going to get as good of a rate. But again, you're getting instant liquidity. You're not having to worry about like, okay, how long does it take from a protocol to actually, get, to unwind your position and whatnot.
So a way to think about it is 1 ETH is worth 1 Swell ETH plus however much interest they've already gathered. So that's why you don't have the 1-to-1.
Yep. There you go. Oh, wow. All right. Frax ETH, another one. So Frax Finance, they are Frax is a stablecoin provider. So I don't know if you guys, some of you have heard of that. They've also created, a stable ETH coin. So they're like, hey, we have Frax ETH, which is also stable with ETH. In order to gain yield, this is where you need to stake it. So it requires you to stake that. But now, again, you've got, another layer of complexity with all of this. So somebody might just say, hey, I want Frax ETH, but now, okay, I actually have to stake it. And now you have to get, staked Frax ETH. So SFRX ETH. So it gets a little bit confusing for people, and that's where you got to make sure, did I do the right thing? So like if you'd have went to Swell, like you were saying, and hey, I staked in here, but I need to do another step and another process. Like we want to be able to try and get people dialed in as quickly as possible so that there isn't any confusion. However, staked Frax ETH is an ERC 4626 vault, and this is where, again, I like this version of it. And if some of you were around for Christian's talk a while back when he was talking about ERC 20 or ERC 4626 vaults, he did a whole presentation on it and shows why they're great. Being essentially having an entire vault underneath it. So as the rewards accrue within that vault contract, and therefore when you do redeem it, it's you're getting your shares of the underlying. So you always have, if you were to have 10 Frax ETH, you actually have 10 shares of the entire, of the pool underneath, or the vault, and that vault is going to grow in size. So therefore, all of your shares are growing in ETH value, essentially. So you'll still only have 10 shares of this staked ETH token, but those shares increase essentially every day or whatnot.
So that's not on main chain or mainnet. That's
yes.
So the fees would be much lower on that.
Sorry, on
Staking for XETH.
no, stake Prax ETH is on mainnet.
Okay.
Yes.
So what's the advantage?
It's just another another provider, right? That's doing it, but you got a mic.
Liquidity for FRX ETH, you get double yield.
I don't know how the staking the FXS token works within staked Frax ETH or within the Frax pools, so I won't get into that. But yeah, that is like if you do that with their stable coin and whatnot, there is some advantages to the FXS token and boosts and all that sort of stuff. But
yeah, that's in the stable. I'm pretty sure it's the case with FRX ETH as well.
Yeah,
even
Frax
through Curve for Frax, if I recall.
could be.
Frax
Anyway, that's one of the
historically
benefits that I
accumulated
asked
a
about.
bunch of V curve,
Yeah.
so they manage a lot of the incentives. So then Frax ETH had a lot of liquidity early when they launched because they managed. So like Frax ETH to ETH LP has better liquidity than something like Swell, for example, just
Yeah.
because Frax controls a lot of the gauges.
So yeah, is that like in Curve in particular, or is that from like just the?
Yeah, I was just
actual
saying, like,
stake?
because he was asking about the
Mhm.
benefits in that case, and it's like I was
Yeah.
wondering that as well, but I'm pretty sure it's similar thing going on that they had
Yes.
with
Is
Frax.
and maybe it is. Again, I can't speak to it whether it is like directly for this LST or is it for like LP pairs within Curve and whatnot.
It's for the pairs too,
Yes.
like
Yeah,
like
okay, yeah.
FRX ETH on Curve would normally be
Yeah.
like 7, but then if you
Right, and then
have
that
FXS,
pool gets boosted because of that. Yeah,
Yeah,
so with
exactly.
that boost part of it, yes.
Yeah.
That's again. This is where now we're starting to get into like, well, why do we want to have? Where are the advantages and like the capital efficiencies around liquid stake tokens? Right? Is these now we can actually put them into other protocols. So yeah, you start adding it to Curve. You start voting on that where you've got more emissions get pushed to it, and then like that whole thing grows and there's boosts and we can that
for
again,
sure, yeah.
we can start. Yeah, there's a whole other. Again, there's like another talk that we can.
Yeah.
There. That would be great for you. There we go.
Okay.
There
Sure.
you go.
Let's
Let's
do it,
get
yeah.
you to talk
I'll
about
do it, yeah.
DeFi.
Okay, sure.
DeFi magic on boosted yields with staked ETH. Perfect. And then the last one here that we'll cover is MEV Protocol. So they've got MEV ETH. This is a project I've been helping out with as well. It's focused around capturing MEV opportunities. It's decentralized. Again, it is ERC 4626 native. So just like we had Frax ETH, where you need to stake it to get this. This is just by its own nature, it is native, ready to go as a 4626. So again, owning shares, and then the underlying vault grows in value, and your shares again when you redeem them are worth more. A 10% fee on this as well.
Can you expand on captures MEV opportunities?
Yeah. Oh boy. Okay. So again, another talk for another day here as well. But we kind of touched on this earlier, and I really wanted to keep this talk a little more focused on LSTs. But like, there's so many other pieces that kind of get brought into the whole ecosystem. So lots of things to kind of touch on and discuss. But yeah, throughout this whole, now with like the proposer builder separation with proof of stake and everything, you've got searchers who are bidding to get their transactions built to put into a block builder. The block builders are then using, or they're getting getting fees from searchers to like put these transactions in. The builders are then building out this whole set of transactions that are going to get passed on to the proposer, which is like the validator set that won the slot. So throughout all of that, that's using this MEV Boost system, and then by using MEV Boost, obviously there's fees that are getting paid, and all of that just gets passed on. essentially down towards the validator. So there's a bunch of MEV opportunities that are happening every single block, every single slot. So the other part of this too is where MEV protocol has created a block space auction. So as builders may say, hey, we've got X amount of our X amount of transactions ready to go that we've been, paid for, or have been, we've got fees from, searchers to give us this, but we haven't filled up the entire block. And you want to fill the block completely because you want to add in all the transactions, receive all the fees as you can, but that remaining part of the block that you might just fill with arbitrary transactions, well, you can now create a market for that. And now people can actually pay to make sure that they're in that market. And so now there's extra value to be captured. So again, we already saw like the differences in, earlier on, like how much from a block that you were just getting to without running MEV Boost, and now you're running MEV Boost, and it was over double. Can't remember exactly what we had there, but there's already so much extra juice coming in just from MEV Boost. Now we add another system in place where there can actually be a whole block space auction for additional space where it's more beneficial for users. So there's just more value to get captured there, and that gets passed on throughout the ecosystem. So there's just a quick kind of like recap on on the capturing the opportunities. Again, there's a whole other talk that should be done to actually dive into MEV opportunities, and now even with this whole block space auction, there's probably a whole other talk on that could be done as well. But I hope that kind of answers that, and I'm sure this leaves a bunch of people with like, I have no idea what you just spoke about here with MEV stuff. But it's a deep dark rabbit hole, so it'd be great if we had one of our MEV experts come back from overseas and actually talk about it again, tell us about the recent landscape. Any other questions, I guess, before move on any of those tokens as we kind of... Okay, cool. Ecosystem benefits. So we kind of touched on a bit of this as we were going through some of these tokens here, but unlocked liquidity, so it's not locked up on the beacon chain. You have immediate liquidity. You can just either swap it out, as we were saying, rather than having to like redeem and waiting any time periods, or in the case with a provider, you can just immediately swap it to ETH or stables or whatever shitcoin you're excited about. It's all available there. Composable in DeFi, so you can use it in so many different DeFi protocols that we've got out there. We touched on that here with Curve and all these extra boosts and yields and all these other things that you can use. Reward opportunities. Here we go more into that, where we have all those kind of become available with with extra yield. So there's another talk I guess we should have around which you'll put that together for us. Curve and Aura and all the convex and Aura and all that sort of stuff, where we start now we're driving incentives and rewards to other pools, and if you have LSTs that are pools, like that's another interesting thing. So not only could you be receiving staked yield from just holding a staked ETH token, now if you were to like provide liquidity for a pair, so like in the example here we were using like Frax ETH and ETH, or I guess it'd be staked Frax ETH and ETH, or some other pair. Those are pretty stable in that sense, where there's not a whole lot of like when it comes to impermanent loss, like that's a real big issue for a lot of people who are LPing. Here we're kind of going off track here, but just to kind of give a little explanation around this. So when you have like price discrepancy, there's impermanent loss because you actually would have been better to have held the assets rather than to LP, because you're slowly either selling or buying one of the other assets in kind of in a sense. So now with something like this where it's relatively stable, and then the price increase that you're getting for the staked ETH, well, you're actually receiving, like, that's increasing in your underlying the other asset that you're LPing. So it's still a win-win, and the amount of impermanent loss is relatively manageable. Now you're getting fees from the swaps, plus you could be getting boosts from some of these DeFi pools. So with something like Curve or on Balancer, those two are kind of the couple of main ones, and then there's a variety of other ones as well. But and then you add like the whole other complexities of Convex or Yearn or like Stake DAO or Aura with Balancer to like start adding other you can start voting on things. Where should incentives be driven towards? And all of a sudden, like this, essentially you just went from having vanilla ETH to now maybe being into an LP pair with like a staked ETH and other vanilla ETH or wrapped ETH, and that's receiving more rewards. Plus, it's getting a boost driven to it. So like all of a sudden, you can start stacking up more rewards as compared to just having vanilla ETH and trying to wait to get to your 32 for you to actually go in and stake and be a part of the whole ecosystem. So, yeah, you got a question?
Hey, yeah, I was just gonna ask about Mantle. How I think they've got the highest APR right now on ETH. Like,
Yeah.
and are they doing it by using MEV, or is it gonna be via DeFi opportunities, like actually pairing it for you? But like, it's pretty much like you just bridge into Mantle, and you get meth instead of like that.
Yeah,
ticker,
so that's
right?
on their chain,
Yeah.
right? And then, yeah, there's a whole other thing. I don't know enough about Mantle ETH, to be honest. So
fair
I
enough,
can't really speak to that too much, unless anybody else here can speak to what's going on with Mantle and ETH.
The cool thing about all of these they are even decentralized, even from Lido. Like Lido,
Mhm.
Rocket Pool,
Mhm.
all the way down. Like, it's actually just node operators who are the ones that you're staking to, in different ways, right? But like Frax is great as well. Like
Mhm.
it
Yep.
all down the chain, and like I was in on Swell as well, and it's
Yep.
like, it doesn't have a token yet, so why not use it, right?
Pearls. I mean,
There's
culture
pearls,
points.
sir. There's pearls. Yeah, you're getting your pearls? Pearls. Yeah, pearls. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
MEV ETH is like heavily incentivized, or sorry, Meth is heavily incentivized by the Mantle L2 Foundation or whatever,
There,
Bybit.
yeah. That's what I was going to say. 'Cause
So-
as soon as you go to their chain, then you've got like other incentives that you can start adding to that. And then,
They have a bunch of different incentives. They also own a bunch of ETH, so they've been taking the earnings from their own ETH to redistribute to other people to get into Meth.
Okay.
So they've been like ponziing it up so that people get into it.
So it's not sustainable, is what you're saying? You don't think?
It's
It's like
currently
7.6.
sustainable. It's like, sure, it's sustainable as long as they have like the extra incentives to give out. Like, it's not like they're giving you a fake token. They're just giving you more ETH. Like, how much ETH do they have to give away? That's kind of like up in the air until they run out. They do have a lot of ETH, and they have like restaked a bunch. So again, it's like, do your research on what risk exposure you want, and then like play accordingly to that. Meth looks good.
Yeah. And sure, but yeah, sustainability at these current levels. That, and that's with any of these things. Yeah, eventually, everything tapers off, or unless, you can figure out how to, increase your boost and have that as a sustainable option. If there's other things rather than just, your underlying token, like maybe, that's why I'm kind of curious about what can happen when we start looking at, we know that every single block there is MEV happening. And that's why that's quite interesting to me, because that's happening outside of like what one protocol is doing or what, one chain is doing. It's like there is MEV happening on every single block on pretty much every transaction. That's like at the, like next to the, like that's as close as you can get to like the source of like where, yield can come from. So, or where extra rewards or extra fees can come from. So that is quite interesting to me. Yeah. So. Ecosystem risks, centralization. Large entities like Lido have too much control. That's, again, we went through this, like 31% of staked ETH is through Lido. Obviously, we want to see these, as distributed as possible. And when we look back at that chart, there's, 14%, I think, was with Rocket Pool, I think is where we were at for the next, or was that Coinbase, sorry. But yeah, even Coinbase now, that's a centralized exchange. And like, anyhow, we just want to see like a bunch of diversity happening within all of that. Smart contract risk, again, if there's a bug or a hack, users' funds are at risk. So that's, obviously can be a big issue. Client diversity as well. If too many LSTs rely on one single client, like Geth or Nethermind, there might be bugs or issues within them that could lead to further systemic risks. Again, we kind of touched on that, I think, during our panel a little bit. So I'll maybe let people reference that or learn more about client diversity around that, so that we have that's a whole other talk that we get too many talks that are going to spawn out of all of this whole thing here. But just using certain clients that you're using to run all of this. Geth is pretty popular, and a lot of people are using it. And so if too many LSTs are using it, perhaps that could be an issue in the future. So having diversity, so maybe you want to re-choose who you're going with, so that they can actually have who they are actually using as a client. And now the latest thing is restaking. So a lot of kind of questions around restaking and how that can all work. Whole presentation needs to be done on that, with the whole everything around EigenLayer and how that works. But with everyone taking their staked ETH and now putting it into EigenLayer, to say, hey, this is where we can, basically to help bootstrap, new ecosystems to leverage like the Ethereum validator sets. What's interesting with this is that anybody that's doing, the restaking, and now, like, for example, something like, Swell was one that I recently kind of looked into a little bit. Anyone can, EigenLayer had a cap for how many staked ETH they would take, or any kind of like liquid LSTs could go in. However, there is no cap for anything or anyone that wants to just stake 32 ETH through them and just continue to stake through EigenLayer with their own, with a 32 ETH set validator. So now we have protocols that are saying, hey, well, guess what? Just do that through us. Just say, hey, we'll give you our restaked, so your LRT, a liquid restaked token. We'll give you that. That's it's a totally different contract, and now we'll put that in. Once that hits 32, we stake a validator with EigenLayer. Or stake that within EigenLayer. But the interesting thing with that is that your withdraw address needs to be pointed to EigenLayer. So it's not directly to your own protocol. You're now taking on that risk from EigenLayer as well. So provided that everything goes well with EigenLayer, and that there isn't any further systemic risks, and that we do keep the amount of ETH that has decided to enter into it, and that doesn't leave, they can still provide all the services. But again, this is a risk that's more people are starting to think about and talk about, and what does this look like coming into the future, and is directly attached to liquid staking tokens, because people are using them to go into EigenLayer. So that's just another risk that kind of gets added onto things, but to be determined on how this all plays out. So I don't know, any other further comments or questions around restaking while we're here? We can kind of talk on that, I guess.
It's kind of an observation, I guess. I think macro, and so this is really in the weeds for me, and the details kind of are whatever, who cares. Yeah. But this is a huge infrastructure that's evolving very quickly, and there's a diversification and an institutionalization of Ethereum as quite an interesting asset moving forward, in my opinion. It's fascinating to watch. Yeah,
absolutely. No, it's it can get quite layered. There's a lot of complexity that's available as compared to, and maybe that's what's great about something like Bitcoin, where it's just simple, it's just dumb, boring, and I mean dumb in a good way. Like when I talk about my Keystone, like my hardware wallet, I'm like, it's the dumbest device I own, and I love that, right? So a lot of that does come with like security as well. So not much you can do with Bitcoin, and maybe that's great. Whereas something like this, there's a lot of complexities they're adding to it, and it can create a bunch of like systemic risk outside of it. So provided everything goes well. Let's hope this doesn't.
You can wrap your Bitcoin.
Yeah, and then you come into the Ethereum world and do all kinds of. And then you can start doing all kinds of weird things with it. But
when BlackRock staked ETH.
Yeah, let's hope. Let's hope that'll be the next thing. There's. You were saying there's a Canadian staked ETH ETF.
Yeah, they've just provided a staked ETH ETF. You don't get a dividend or anything. They roll the staked profits back into the protocol, which boosts price of the asset, underlying price of the asset.
Cool.
They would like to start presenting it as a dividend at some point. They just legally can't do it yet.
I see. So it's just like the underlying value of your shares grow
basically, yeah, because the pool of money it represents gets bigger because
so it's
there's
like
interest
an
on it.
4626.
First product in the world that does this.
Excellent. Here we are in Canada. We're impressive, progressive. Way to go. Way to go. It's unfortunately we haven't had someone like Gary to protect us, so now we have our, these, we're just aping into these new products. All right, so yeah, I guess, as we've kind of talked about this, when you're thinking about this, what is right for you, if at all, capital efficiencies, smart contracts, be sure that you're, understand the product that you're investing in and how it works. Again, we've talked about a bunch of that today. Client diversity. This is the same. We were to look at this one. Yeah, client diversity. Yeah, just make sure, if you are thinking about helping decentralize Ethereum, maybe you could think about that a little bit. And then centralization too with, do you want to keep, should you be going into staked ETH, like into ST ETH, with Lido? Is that really your first choice? Or now today you've learned about a bunch of other ones and kind of understood that, hey, by contributing to that, we're not helping the whole decentralization part of all this. So it's up to you to help decentralize. So choose accordingly and choose what's right for you. Yeah. Alrighty, that's that. So there's thanks everybody for coming out. So there's my Twitter handle and then my link tree if you wanna if you scan that, if you haven't connected with me already. But okay, questions, comments, concerns. Has there been anything online?
Is there a POAP tonight?
There is a POAP tonight. Yeah, of
Nice.
course. So yeah, I don't know if we had any questions. I didn't really pay attention there. Yeah, no, all good. But yeah, anything else? Oh yeah.
How did Lido get its market share dominance if it's relatively inconvenient for being a rebasing token?
Well, that's where they have like the hey, thank you. They've got a the wrapped version of it, right? So that you take just like when we said with Frax, right? Except Frax ETH is, it wasn't ever getting anything, but then it, you stake it and you got, this 4626. Yeah, so that's what they have, wrapped staked ETH. And so that's where most of the times that you're dealing with it when you're going into a pool or something, that you'll be getting wrapped staked ETH. So again, it wasn't really thought of in the beginning stages because it was like, well, let's just get staked ETH and it's a rebasing thing. This is sweet. People like that. And then it's like, well, how is this going to work within DeFi, right? And especially as like the complexities around DeFi and how we're seeing pools grow and a whole bunch of other things. Yeah, it's kind of like, that was one of the first movers. Actually, the first liquid staking token was CRETH2 or CRETH2. And that was through Cream Finance. They were the very first ones, and that actually migrated to MEV protocol, to MEV ETH. So all of that ETH came to MEV ETH in that protocol. So yeah, early. Cream. Some of the Cream people are involved with MEV protocol. So yeah, kind of an interesting fact there. Early days. Any other questions? You can turn the mic on. Actually,
It's
you're
like
gonna say-
DVT.
Oh,
Isn't
somebody
that what Lido has? Like where it's like
distributed validator.
distributed.
Yeah, maybe we could ask some of our experts in the back here to talk about DVT. Do you want to talk about that quick?
What was the question? Sorry.
You're talking about is Lido using DVT at all, or what?
Isn't
I don't
isn't Lido like getting like
I
very
haven't caught up.
decentralized itself
Well,
just
so
by using like DVT technology? Like I don't exactly know the premise behind it, and that's kind of why I'm asking. But
Lido's like doing a few different things. So I haven't looked at the system in like 6 months. So correct me if anyone knows if I'm wrong. But it's like they have these like they're trying out these different ways to have certain numbers of their operators like use like specific infrastructure that would be more fault tolerant or essentially more secure. And they'll have like right now Lido has 29 permission node operators, and they're all like, so all that ETH, it's not necessarily like, it's not held by Lido, like that 30%. It's like distributed across these 29. And so the system, like if one of the operators goes down, it doesn't affect like the abilities of the other operators per se, but still they're holding what, like 1 to 2% of the whole supply each, and that's still pretty hard. So it's like that's pretty high, and like, you know, that shit could go wrong, that could affect a lot of people, right? So like they're not only helping incentivize some of their, I think, existing node operators to use different technologies, but also eventually it's going to be like, instead of having whitelisted operators, it's going to be permissionless. And there's going to be like different systems that are trust minimized that people can participate as node operators and join, kind of more like a rocket pool model. But they're going to use a whole bunch of different ones. So it's like even more distributed. Like we're going to like modularly attach all of these different like cool things and come, you know, be a pool operate for Lido, and it's more decentralized. One of which is, well, I think they're partnering with both OBAL and SSV Network, which are two of the major, I think also there's a couple others, but they're, one of which is DBT. And so DBT is this way that like, so let's say I'm one of these operators that's, I want to join as just an operator. I can have less than 32 ETH, I can have 32 ETH. It doesn't really matter, but I have the hardware. And so I can kind of join a group of other people who also want to validate as well. And we operate one validator, like one validator key, so one set of 32 ETH per se, but we divide the operation of that key, we split it amongst a group of us. So it could be 4 of us, it could be 8 of us, it doesn't matter, you can build it however you want. But the principle being that you only need a threshold of them available for the validator to keep operating. And it's like, none of them have to trust each other or anything like that. So it's like, if 2/3 are operating correctly, then like the validator will keep signing as normal, which means it can tolerate 1/3 of the operators for that one validator going down. So let's say like they can all, you know, run different execution clients and consensus clients. And so it's like you create this system in which like you can protect each other while protecting others. It's actually very cool. There's a lot of different configurations you can do. Yeah.
Yeah, slowly.
That was thorough too. that was awesome.
So I'll recap. Token is SSV LDO.
I'm not. I wouldn't suggest any. I would say do your own research before you take any. Like before you take any particular token or any particular network. There's a few different options for DBT. It's been built by a few different teams. I wouldn't want to promote any particular one. I think you should look into that yourself.
Is there anything else that we should be? Any other things that we should be researching, you know, maybe tonight?
What do you mean researching tonight?
Is there other things? So like we were just heard something about SSV, but it was
oh yeah, I would look into OBAL network. There's also Diva staking, and I believe does Swell have anything to do with DBT?
Suave
or
well,
not?
That's like Flashbots.
Not Suave, Swell.
Oh, Swell. Oh.
Do they have anything to do with DBT, or they were trying or something?
Swell. I don't know what Swell's up to. You were out there. What are they doing? Yeah, all right. Yeah,
no, I'm not sure if Swell does, but there's Diva, OBAL, SSV Network, and maybe 1 or 2 others at this point.
Okay.
And so I would just recommend. They all do it differently, and there's some important implications to that in terms of their token and a lot of things that I recommend you look into.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah. So, all right. Okay. Any further last questions? Anything else? Nothing? Okay, make sure that you, there's that nice little black sign at the back here right beside the Doodles rug. There's a nice little POAP. It's on the side here, right? And there's a little area that says POAP. So you just take your phone, go up there, tap it with your, watch, Kai's going to do it right now. And you just tap, usually on the top of with an iPhone, on the top of it. There you go. Don't need your camera, no camera. And just tap the top, and it's an NFC card. It's going to pop up. It's going to give you a link. You tap on it, and mint your POAP. Just like that. Then put in your ETH address if you've got one, or your email if you're not quite Web3 ready. But I think everyone here is. So there you go. Now you are. And yeah, if you don't mind, just fold up your chairs and yeah, hang out for a bit if you want. Alrighty. Thanks, everyone. Okay, goodbye. You're welcome. Let me hit this.